Hello and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, I'm a stay-at-home mom of Irish twin boys, and a couple weeks ago I told my oldest son's birth story. We're kind of in the span here of about a month where they are the same exact age, and this time really hits me hard as I realize they're getting older. It makes me very nostalgic, and I really reflect a lot on their birth stories. So I thought I would share those here on YouTube. I will link my firstborn's birth story below. I told that a couple of weeks ago. Today is going to be my youngest birth story, my little Emeric. I told the story of how I found out I was pregnant and all of that in another video. I will also link that in case you're interested in hearing all of that, but we will jump right in here. If this kind of content interests you, don't forget to like and subscribe before you leave and connect with me over on my Instagram. Let's dive right in. First of all, I do have to give a little background on my pregnancy. I, of course, told how I found out I was pregnant and everything in that other video. After that, my pregnancy was pretty uneventful. I felt Emeric move at around 8 weeks, which is absolutely crazy. We ended up actually announcing that I was pregnant with him around 8 weeks because I was already starting to show. That's what happens when you have kids so close together, is your body is just experienced at that point and things start to happen a little earlier than they would have if they had been farther apart. At his 20-week scan, we found that his kidneys were a little bit dilated, which is pretty normal in boys. I had no idea about any of that, but my pediatrician explained it all to me, and apparently your pediatrician will usually check them at birth and then check in on them a few months after to make sure they're having the proper amount of wet diapers and everything, and if they are, then everything is completely fine. In my case, they set me up for a 30-week ultrasound just to make sure that everything resolved itself before I could have him in a birthing center. I ended up having several bouts of preterm labor. I had it at 17 weeks. I believe I had it at 21 weeks. I had it at 27 weeks, and then at 30 weeks as well. At that 30-week mark, I could not get the labor to stop. It was not progressing, like getting stronger or anything, but it had gone on for a long time. So my midwife had us go to the ER so that I could get checked out, make sure things weren't actually progressing, because I did not want a preemie, I did not want a baby in the NICU, and I was terrified about it. And she was like, well, just go in and get checked out. The worst that's gonna happen is they'll send you home. So I went in, they did the whole monitor thing, monitored me and baby. I was not dehydrated, I had eaten recently, so it wasn't anything like that. It was just the fact that my kids were so close together that my body was not able to handle it. And when you have kids that close, your body very much remembers labor, so it can automatically just hop right into that labor mode and kind of kickstart things when it shouldn't. So I was given a drug that helped stop things basically before we would move on to like the magnesium IV and that kind of thing, and it worked. It stopped everything, and I was very, very grateful. So a couple days later, I ended up having my 30-week scan to make sure his kidneys were fine and everything, and I was really excited because this means I got to see him again before he was born. I didn't get that with my first, so I was very excited to see how much he had grown and everything since the 20-week scan. He had grown quite a bit. He had very long fingers, very long toes, a lot of hair. His kidneys looked totally fine. Everything looked like it had gone back to the way it should be. But when she was about done, she paused and she was like, I think I'm going to do an internal ultrasound as well. I need to check on something. And I was like, okay. So she did the internal ultrasound, and then I was informed that my cervix, which is supposed to be pretty thick, was extremely, extremely thin. And the reason for that was all the preterm labor that I had been having up until then. My midwife was really concerned about this. Obviously, we did not want him to come super early, so I was put on bed rest and told to kind of chill and told to come back in a couple weeks, and we would do another ultrasound just to make sure things were still intact, and if anything happened in the meantime, to call and just let them know. I took it kind of easy for that 2 weeks, but also I had a 10-month-old baby at home, and I was not able to just not pick him up and not move him, not feed him, not get up with him in the middle of the night. These are things that are just basic taking care of your baby kind of things. So I was taking it easy when he was napping, but also like my household had to continue running and everything. So I was being a little more careful than I was before, like trying not to overdo it. I had a bunch of like nesting things I was wanting to finish before the baby came, and all of that kind of got put on the back burner. But other than that, I was not taking it easy enough. So that 2 weeks passed and I went in for another ultrasound, which I was extremely excited for because again, I got to see him and how he was developing and everything. And I got some not so great news. My cervix had thinned even more. I believe it's supposed to be at a 3, and I don't know if that's centimeters, millimeters. I don't know if that's some other kind of unit of measurement. I have absolutely no idea, but it's supposed to be at like 3.5. Mine was at less than 2. So he literally could have come at any point, and there's nothing we could have done to stop that because that's what was keeping him in, and it was almost gone. So they put me on strict bed rest, and I was like beside myself because I was like, I don't know what to do. I have another baby at home, so it's not like I can just drop everything and lie in bed all day. I have responsibilities and I have things that I have to do. I didn't know what to do. And I happened to mention this to my mother-in-law, and she was just overwhelmingly sweet and basically just said, you know what, I'm going to drop everything and come and live with you basically and help you in any way you need. And I am so grateful for that, because had it not been for her dropping everything and putting her life on hold, my son would have ended up in the NICU. So around 35 weeks, I went back in for another check, and they said it had thinned a little bit more, and I was like, there's no possible way this child is going to stay in there until 37 weeks, which was my goal at that point, because that's early term, but it's still full term. They usually do okay at 37 weeks. And I was like, there's no possible way I'm going to make it 2 more weeks if I'm literally lying in bed all day and he's still moving down. And I could feel this kid moving down. Every time I went to the bathroom, I thought he was gonna fall into the toilet. Like, he was so far down. I was like, I don't know how he could possibly be any lower. You know that feeling towards the end when you're like sitting on this child's head? That's exactly how I felt for well over a month. My midwife was super encouraging, and she was like, you can do it, just lie flat on your back. The more he's rocked into your body, the less he's going to be putting pressure on all of that and moving down. So really try and keep your body to where he's as far rocked back as possible. And I was like, okay. So I had another sonogram after that at a different doctor's office, and they said that my cervix had actually thickened at that point. And I was like, okay. Like, that gave me a lot of hope, thinking maybe there is a possibility that he could stay in. At that point, they sent me to a hospital, and I got steroid shots for his lungs to make sure that if he did come early, his lungs would be developed properly and he would have a lot smaller of a chance of ending up in the NICU. I really, really didn't want to have a NICU baby. That is just so hard on a family, especially when I had another baby at home. I was dreading that so badly. So we went and got the steroid shot on one side one night, and then the next day we went up and got the steroid shot on the other side. And I remember lying in that hospital bed, looking at the ceiling, seeing all the like lights and everything that they have on when you're giving birth, so that the doctor can see everything properly and everything. And I was like, oh, I do not want to have a baby in the hospital. I just want to have that nice homey setting of the birthing center. Oh, I really just want him to be okay. I don't want to have him early. I just want him to come when he should come. I just remember thinking all of these things over and over and praying that he would stay in, and he did. He made it. I remember that 36 weeks, 6-day mark. I was still awake at midnight, and I had 37 weeks, and I was just absolutely ecstatic. He was still in there, and oh my word, the absolute relief I felt from that, I cannot even explain to you. I could now have him in the birthing center. The chances of him being in the NICU went down significantly. I was able to be off of bed rest, and now the waiting game began. It's a very good thing I was on bed rest for all that time, because literally I had this child at 37 weeks and 1 day, because I got up and I was moving around and he decided to come. So now we move on to the actual birth story. So what happened was I called my midwife and told her that I was having constant Rex and Hicks, and she was like, okay, why don't you walk around for a little bit and then lie down, drink some magnesium, make sure you stay hydrated, and if they stop, let me know. If they don't, keep me updated. So I walked a little bit, and as I was walking, I had to stop because the contractions were starting to really hurt. And this was the first time I had had like normal, regular contractions where they hurt like in your belly and your back. With my first, I had really bad back labor. So this was new to me, and I thought this was just Braxton Hicks still. I continued walking, I was staying hydrated. I ate like a little snack so that there was something in my stomach, and I just walked and rested and then went home. When we got home, we took one last picture of my pregnant belly and got everything together. I asked my husband if he would help me clean the house, and he cleaned everything basically while I sat on the phone and called my aunt. She was a part of my birth team, so I called her to let her know what was going on. I called my photographer to let her know what was going on, and then we went to bed. I believe we laid down around 10. I knew I wasn't really gonna get much sleep, but I decided to lie down anyway. And I remember I crawled into bed, got all situated with my pregnancy pillow. As soon as I relaxed my body laying down, I had an intense contraction. Oh my word, it hurt so bad. I was like up that fast. I was like, I am not laying here through this. This is ridiculous. I cannot handle lying down through contractions, and that one was intense. So I got up, I went ahead and did my hair so it would be nice and cute if he came that night. I called my midwife again to let her know that I was having much more intense contractions than I was having earlier. She was like, okay, why don't we wait about an hour, and if you're still having them, why don't you go ahead and come to the birthing center. I took that time to put on makeup, and I called my mother-in-law. She was supposed to come and stay with Malachi. She decided to go ahead and come over. That way, if we did end up having to go, she would already be there and we could leave as soon as we wanted to. As I was standing there putting my makeup on, the contractions got closer and closer and closer together and more painful, and I was like, it had only been about half an hour since I had gotten up from bed, and I was like, whoa, this is happening pretty fast. And I know they say that like the second can come pretty quickly, but I was not at all expecting this. So I called my aunt and I was like, you're gonna need to go ahead and head this way. I know I said to wait a little bit, but if you come to the house now, then you can ride with us. And she was like, okay. So she threw everything in her car and she started heading that way. Around 11, my mother-in-law got there, and when she got there, I was really struggling to breathe through the contraction that I was having. I called my midwife again and I was like, look, I don't think I can do this anymore by myself. This is really getting intense. And she was like, okay, why don't you go ahead and head that way. I called my aunt back yet again and told her to just go to the birthing center because we were leaving. My husband kind of threw everything in the car. I buckled in, and about 2 seconds into the ride, I unbuckled myself, turned myself around, buried my face in the seat, and basically, yelled the whole way there. They were coming so hard and so fast. I was really struggling to cope at all. And I was like, don't speed, please drive safely. I am not buckled. And my husband was like, I'm not even speeding. Everything feels much faster, turns out, if you're turned backwards in the car. We were about 40 minutes from the birthing center. We finally got to town. It felt like an hour and a half long drive. And when we got to town, everything was like under construction, and the road that we take to get to the birthing center was blocked. There was this guy in front of us literally going like 25 miles an hour, and it was like a 45, and I was like, oh my word, run him over. Like, honk at him, do something, get him out of the way, we've got to get here now. I am so scared this baby is going to be born in the car. They just kept coming harder and closer together, and I was like, he's literally going to be born like in my hands right now. And I hemorrhaged last time. We don't know if that's gonna happen again. We cannot have him by ourselves. He cannot be born in this car. So my husband found a different route. He had to go all the way around to get to the birth center the back way, but we finally got there. We got out of the car. My husband prayed with me, and as he was getting done praying, our photographer drove up. I called my midwife to let her know we were there, and she came out and let us in. She took us to the only available room left that night. Apparently there was 4 other babies being born, and one of them she was transferring to the hospital as we drove up. So she had to finish all of that before she could do anything with me. So she put me in the room, and basically we just kind of sat there and waited until she was able to get to me. Can I just say that midwife is an absolute boss. She was like 7.5 months pregnant and had all these other births, and I felt very well attended to. She was very, very attentive and just unbelievably helpful, and all while super pregnant, and I received excellent care. I just wanted to brag on her really quickly. She did an absolutely amazing job. To move things along a little bit, she had me bouncing on the birth ball. Turns out I did not need help moving things on a little bit at all, but we'll get to that in a second. I was bouncing on the birthing ball, and then every contraction I had, I would stand and my husband would squeeze my hips, and oh my word, it was magical. It helped so much with the pain. She didn't want me to get into the birthing tub yet. She needed to check me first and make sure I was actually progressing. So when she was available, she came in and checked me, and I was only at a 3, and I was like, a 3? How in the world am I hurting this bad and I'm only at a 3? Like, this is crazy. They usually want you between like a 6 and a 7 before you can get in the pool. So I was like, what can we do to move this along so that I can get in that water, because I need that water. I need it. She had me bounce on the birth ball, had me move in a few different positions, and then my aunt also arrived around the time that I was like, is there no other way I can move things along, because this is hurting really bad and I'm only at a 3? Like, what? My midwife was like, well, if you lie on the bed and put the peanut ball between your legs, that should help move him down a little bit. And I was like, let's try that. So I lied down on the bed, we did the peanut ball, and those contractions lying down hurt so like agonizingly bad. And then I realized the only thing I had really eaten that day was like that snack that I had when I was walking around. My stomach was empty and I started feeling super nauseous, and my contractions were coming like every minute. It was really intense. So I had my husband grab a barf bag. He like scrounged through the stuff really quickly and found a barf bag and brought it over right as I puked. And then I started throwing up regularly as I was having contractions, lying down with this ball between my legs. And at some point I was like, can I please get it into the birth tub? She was like, yes, let me check you one more time just to make sure you're progressing, and then we can get you in there because you seem really miserable. And I was like, yes, I need the water, please. She checked me and I was at a 6. So she filled the tub, and before like anything would happen, I was just like stripping my clothes off. I was like, let me in the tub, I need the water. I was shaking super bad before I got in the tub, and as I was getting in there, I was asking her like, why am I shaking? I was like, I'm not really cold, I can't stop it, my body is literally just like, I can't focus because of this, like what's going on? And she was like, well, you might be entering transition. And I was like, okay, how long does transition usually last? And she said between 10 minutes and 2 hours. It can be a little while here, but you've only been in labor for a little bit, so it might be closer to the 2 hours. And I was like, okay. So I kind of like was psyching myself up for that 2 hours, and I had another contraction, and at the end of that contraction, my body pushed, and I was like, it might be actually sooner than 2 hours. And she was like, okay, I need to step out really quickly. I'll be right back. Is that okay? And I was like, yes, it's totally fine. Go ahead. So she stepped out, and literally as she stepped out, I started having another contraction, and it was not a contraction. My body was pushing, and it was pushing hard. When I give birth, I kind of just let my body do its thing. I don't necessarily push one way or another. If I feel like I need to push, then I will, but I just kind of let my body do its thing. And I kid you not, when my body did that, I felt his head, and I was like, oh my goodness, someone go get her. And my aunt and the photographer were both standing there looking at me. My husband was kind of helping me cope with everything, squeezing my hips and stuff still, and they were both just like standing there looking at me like, what? And I was like, go get the midwife. So she heard me say that, and she was already headed back, so they went to get her, and she was like, I heard. So she was coming back already. And when she got in there, I was like, I felt his head. And she was like, it's okay, calm down. I had literally gone from a 6 to a 10 in less than 10 minutes. I was definitely in transition when I was shaking like that. So she kind of just helped me calm down and breathe, and my contractions stopped. And I was like, what is going on? It really kind of freaked me out, because I was like, tell me I did not just do all this work and the labor stopping. And she was like, no, your body is just resting, he's about to come. And I was like, oh, okay. So she had me lean forward a little bit, and I had another contraction, and his entire head came out. So she had me just lean up out of the water a little bit so that his head was clear of the water. And then the next push, he totally came out. And when he came out, he was like purple. And it's not that he wasn't breathing, it was that he was so bruised. That poor child was like black and blue from his head to his feet. He was like, oh, so beaten and battered from coming out that fast. And I felt so bad. I was like, did I do that to him? And she was like, no, you're fine. Like, that happens all the time. I had this horrible fear that he was not going to be breathing when he was born. I can't actually remember why. It was just I had had a lot of anxiety wrapped around that and him being so early, and I had several dreams that he had had some significant complications when he was born. So I asked probably 50 times. She was so unbelievably patient with me, and I think I was driving my husband crazy because he was like, honey, everything's fine. Like, you don't need to keep asking. But I kept asking, is he okay? Is he breathing? Because he was purple, and he was also the calmest baby. So he was not crying, he was making zero sounds, he wasn't really moving, he wasn't limp or anything, but he wasn't moving. And she was like, no, he's totally fine, feel his cord, it's super healthy. All that pulsing is like the oxygen going to him still, he's completely fine. So he started pinking up a couple minutes after coming out, and his fingers were just like so long, and his toes were so long, and he was so long, but he was also so tiny. My first was born at 38 weeks, 5 days, and he was 8 pounds, 15 ounces. My second was born at 37 weeks, 1 day, and he was 7 pounds, 12 ounces. So I'm not sure what kind of monsters I'm birthing, but oh my goodness, they were huge. But to me, he felt tiny because my first was so big. So I just holding him in the water, and I was like, oh my goodness, I can't even handle it. Like, that absolute bliss of meeting him for the first time was just completely unmatched by any other feeling. I cannot describe the feeling of holding your little one for the first time, and that sitting in the water holding him. It's just such a primal maternal feeling, and it's literally like that rush of oxytocin. It's the best feeling I can describe. It's just absolutely beautiful. Since I had hemorrhaged so badly that first time around, they came in and immediately, as soon as he came out, gave me a shot in my leg to help me keep from bleeding, and it worked. I still bled quite a bit, but it stopped pretty quickly. So I was able to sit in the water and just kind of hold him for a minute. And I was really not in the tub for that long, maybe half an hour. And when they drained the water, I birthed a placenta and everything in the tub, but I could not stand. It is the weirdest feeling ever. Like, my legs are literally just mush at that point, even though I'd only been in the water for like maybe 30 minutes. It wasn't that long, but my legs were not working. So they had to basically like pick me up and carry me to the bed. They checked, no tears whatsoever. I had like some abrasions, and that was about it. She brought the placenta over at some point and showed it to me. It was huge. Not as big as I thought it would be. I've heard people describe it before, and I thought it was going to be a lot bigger than it was, but it was pretty good sized. She said the cord was like unbelievably healthy looking, like super thick. I was really kind of proud of myself because the first time I ate kind of whatever I wanted. The second time I ate really, really well. I gained like 35 pounds, but the first time I was super, super swollen, like really uncomfortable the whole time, super nauseous and everything. The second time I felt so great. I was not swollen, like hardly at all. Like, I carried him completely differently. Aside from like the preterm labor and the complications at the end with him coming early, it was like my dream pregnancy. I was super proud of myself for how healthy everything looked. And I worked so hard to make sure that he was going to be as healthy as possible, and I was just really proud of myself. I believe he was born at 2:48 in the morning, and it was a really weird feeling because I'd been awake that entire time, and then I had that surge of adrenaline after he was born, and I was up super, super long, but I felt completely normal. My mother-in-law brought my oldest in the morning, and he was able to meet him, and it was just the sweetest thing. He couldn't really talk very much yet, but he was able to say BB, and it was, oh my goodness, so cute. I'll insert the video of them meeting each other at the end of the video, but it was just the sweetest thing you've ever seen. Then we went home, and everything was completely fine and completely normal until 24 hours later. I was nursing the baby in bed, and I looked up at my wall, and I was thinking, so I wasn't really paying attention. When I stopped thinking, I realized I could not see the wall. I could see like a little bit out of the peripheral side of my eyes, but I could not see anything in front of me. It was all black, and like around it was kind of tingly. It was very strange. And I also had a little bit of a migraine. So, I was like, oh, it's just the migraine. I'll just ride it out. So about an hour into this, it was getting worse. I almost didn't have any vision in my peripherals either. So I called my midwife, and I was like, what is going on? I explained to her everything. And she was like, you actually sound like you might have a blood clot. I can't remember what she called it, but apparently it's not uncommon for a postpartum mom to end up with some kind of blood clot, whether that be in her legs or her brain or her lungs. Like, apparently that's not uncommon at all. So she told me to immediately go to the ER. Because of COVID, I had to leave my newborn baby at home. That was really difficult, but my husband went with me and we were transferred to a different hospital. I was able to bring my pump and everything so that it didn't really affect my breastfeeding at all, but it was a really terrifying time of not being able to have my baby with me and not know what was going on and to not be able to see anything. About an hour after we got transferred, my vision completely cleared, and then they moved me and I was able to take all these different tests and everything. And when they got to the tests, everything looked 100% fine, completely normal, and all they can think is I did have a blood clot in my brain and it moved by itself, completely cleared up, and it was totally gone. They discharged me in the middle of the night, which they said they never ever do, but I was able to go home and snuggle my baby and I had 0 complications after that. Other than the whole blood clot thing, my postpartum healing was like, if I ever have another baby, I hope that's how it is again, because it was awesome. So anyway, yeah, that's my second birth story. I hope you enjoyed. If you experienced anything like I did, I would love to hear about it. If you want to comment below, I would love to read through all of those stories. And that's about all I have for today. Thanks so much for listening. I will catch you in the next one. Bye.
Oh, is that your baby? Oh, look how sweet he is. Oh, tiny. Oh, he's really moved. So sweet. Can you say baby? Yeah, it's true. You got it. He came. Oh my goodness.